In the last part, we saw that General Huang tried to stop Yan Shun, but he was dragged towards the dog houses. Yan Shun, you heartless dog, even if I became a ghost, I would not let you go. You will die a horrible death. A heart-rending shriek sounded from behind. Hearing that, the bodyguard swiftly kicked General Huang's mouth, sending his teeth flying. Yan Shun was completely undisturbed as he continued to walk. Behind him there were countless officials who were trembling in fear. Yan Shun clearly broke into a cold smile that seemed to be colder than absolute zero. If even living was such pain that he would rather die, why would he even bother about how horribly he would die? The lands of Yanbei were still mostly barren, and this winter seemed to be particularly long. The weather turned cold again as freezing winds swept past the lands, bringing about the clacking of the armor of the messengers. Along the Jingji Gate, the sounds traveled deep into the Shaofang Palace. In the empty Shuiyao Palace, there was only silence, with the pillars standing still and the veils slightly swaying in the wind. The candlelight flickered in the wind, with some already burnt out, yet none dared to step up to relight them. A man sat in the shadow, with one hand holding his forehead as though he had already fallen asleep. He looked so lonely, even as his well-defined features looked ever so handsome. Yet, under the light, one could see that in his sideburns there were already strands of white hair. With the backlight, one could catch an occasional flash of silver. This day was the New Year celebration. Unlike the bustling of the Wei Palace, Shafang Palace was immersed in deadly silence. The dishes that the chief spent all their hard cooking were left alone, with only the night breeze occasionally bringing away a waft of smell of the delicious foods. When Azin entered, his footsteps were a tad heavy and woke the sleeping man. With a light flicker of his eyebrow, Yan Shun gradually opened his eyes, illuminated by the flickering of the light. His face seemed rather pale. Your Majesty, Ajin knelt on the ground and quietly declared, Lord Feng sent a letter. Yan Shun seemed to have been drinking. The cup tipped over, spilling its content over his clothes, with the aroma of the alcohol quietly diffusing through the air. He took the letter and calmly read it. His brows were slightly furrowed as always, with his eyes completely calm. Before Yan Shun, there was an extra chair with an extra set of utensils prepared. Azin knew who he was waiting for, yet that person might never come back. The letter was merely a dozen words, yet it took forever for Yan Shun to read it finish. It was as though Yan Shun was trying to forever engrave those words into his heart. After a long while, he placed the letter on the table and used the wine bottle to hold it down. He then picked up the silver chopsticks and slowly started to eat. Your Majesty, Ajin frowned before suggesting, the food is already cold. Should this subordinate request them to cook more? Yan Shun did not speak, but merely waved his hand, indicating for Azin to step back. Yan Shun completely ignored him as he continued to eat, carefully savoring every single bite. The dancers who were kneeling on the ground quickly stood up, Numb from kneeling on the ground for so long, she almost fell down. Yet she still hurriedly started to pass the dishes that were out of reach to Yanshun. The candle flames dripped down one by one like a dripping blood. The wind bells gave out crisp sound from outside, melodic and serene. He merely sat there and quietly ate. What was rare was that he had been able to eat all the food that the dancers had passed over to him. With the candlelight shining on him, a long shadow was cast on the obsidian floor. Azin felt a sense of sadness as he suddenly recalled how Chu Xiao's first meal after waking up was eaten in an equally peaceful and calm manner, so slowly as well. It was as though every moment was filled with pain. Jin's eyes started to tear up. He did not understand. How could they be able to withstand such tough days along with such sadness and pain? Yet when they had already reached their goal, they fall out. Yet he did not dare to ask, as he merely stood there like an idiot. The man sitting before the feast started to cough. At first it was a rather light cough, but it grew louder and echoed in the vacant palace, filled with fatigue. The dancer was shocked stiff as she quickly whipped out her handkerchief and passed it over to Yanshun. The other dancer started to pour a cup of wine for him with her hand trembling. After receiving the handkerchief, Yanshun covered his mouth and arched over like a lobster. One of the dancers shrieked out in fear. Yanshun turned over his head and looked at her with an exceedingly cold gaze. She immediately froze in her tracks and lowered her head, unable to look up at him any longer. "Your Majesty, have you caught a cold? The subordinate will call a doctor now," Azin told Yanshun. "That would be unnecessary." Yanshun's voice was filled with a tinge of fatigue, yet he acted in his usual manner, cold and not wasting a single word. "Pour the wine," he calmly ordered. The dancer, who was slightly further away from him, cautiously lifted her head, and even though her voice was trembling, she gathered her courage to talk back. "Your Majesty, you are not feeling well. Please do not drink." Even though all eyes were on her, she still courageously continued, "Your Majesty, drinking is bad for your health." Pausing, she continued, "Not only is drinking bad for health, it will also create problems. Only incompetent people drink to avoid their problems." A crisp sound rang out in Yanshun's head. Slightly taken aback, Yanshun's thoughts sped up and traveled back in time. After a slight deliberation, Yanshun ultimately nodded and ordered, "All right, go and make some tea for me." That dancer was 16 to 17 years old, and happily she nodded. With her white waist revealed in her clothing, she seemed like a smooth and flexible little fish as she cantered off to make some tea. Jin's eyes swept past the letter that was addressed for Yanshun, and a few words jumped into his eyes. He was slightly shocked and quickly bowed before lightly greeting Yanshun. "Your Majesty, rest early." Without any further reply, Azin turned around and walked off in the empty palace. Moved into UNU's residence, in Xiangyang and no longer carry out surveillance have been discovered. Azin thought about those words that he had coincidentally seen. As the heavy palace doors were opened by the servants, he stepped out. In the quietness of the dark night, the civilians had lost all their interest to celebrate the occasion. Before the gates, there was a scene of gore. A few bodies were casually placed at the corner of the palace. The corpses were filled with stab of spear and had been stepped into moss. The servants were currently loading a few bodies onto a small cart as they rushed the driver. Quickly, bring them away. By the time the sky is bright, the officials will come. What had happened? Azin asked. They are the remnants of Datong. One soldier who had originally been trained in Datong did not have any reservations in speaking so bluntly. As he continued to elaborate, this was the second wave today. After Master Huang had died, they become even more crazy. They dared to even attack us so openly. Azin gradually frowned. He was pretty confident that they were not crazy, and this was probably more of a suicide in despair. The main leader of Datong had all been killed by His Majesty. Such a long-lasting organization that could not be wiped out for so many years had fallen to their alley. Be careful, stay on guard. Do not worry, General. One of the guards smiled and said, "We are trained by Master Chu herself. As long as we guard these gates, we will not even let a mosquito in." As he spoke, the man realized that he had uttered the wrong words. How could Chu Xiao still be addressed as General, given that she had betrayed Yan Bei? General, Azin did not say another word as he turned to leave. The moonlight shone on his body, appearing as a pale shade of white. That's it for today. Thank you.